Alien Empress panicked when her predator spawn vanished, until found them cuddling a human mechanic. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The Imperial flagship Celestial Dominion hung in orbit around the newly established embassy world of Nexus 7, its massive hull gleaming under the light of twin suns. Inside, Empress Thavera of the Dravari Empire paced anxiously, her scaled skin shimmering with iridescent blues and purples that betrayed her growing distress. "Empress, please," her chief advisor Narek urged, his voice lowered respectfully. "The diplomatic summit begins in less than 2 hours. The representatives from 17 galactic civilizations await your presence." Thavera's 8-foot frame towered over her advisor as she whirled around, mandibles clicking with irritation. "My offspring are missing, Narek. I will not attend any summit until they are found." The Dravari were known throughout the galaxy as apex predators, their evolutionary lineage stemming from mantis-like hunters whose natural armor and superior strength had allowed them to dominate their homeworld. Though now an advanced spacefaring civilization, their biological instincts remained intact, particularly the fierce protective nature of Dravari mothers. "We've deployed the entire royal guard to search for the princesses," Narek said, his compound eyes blinking rapidly in what humans might interpret as nervousness. They could not have left the secure royal quarters without triggering alarms. Yet somehow, the 3 royal offspring, only 6 months old but already as large as human children, had vanished without a trace. At this vulnerable stage of development, the young Dravari were experiencing their first hunting instincts, their bodies filled with energy but their minds not yet disciplined. They were essentially apex predator toddlers, curious, surprisingly fast, and potentially dangerous. "The security feeds show nothing," said Commander Vex as he entered the chamber and bowed deeply. However, there was a brief power fluctuation in Section 47B, near the maintenance access tunnels. It's possible they found their way into the service corridors. Thavera's antennae twitched forward, a sign of intense focus among her species. "Section 47B borders the human technicians' quarters, does it not?" "Yes, Empress," Vex confirmed, his tone growing grave. "The human engineering crew assigned to upgrade our propulsion systems is housed in that section." A cold dread washed through Thavera's body. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago. Many species found them unpredictable, their emotions extreme, their behaviors perplexing. They had quickly established themselves as skilled engineers and problem solvers, which was why Thavera had reluctantly allowed a small contingent aboard her flagship. But now her offspring, the future of the royal lineage, vulnerable despite their predatory nature, were potentially in human territory. "Alert the human supervisor," she commanded. "Tell no one else of this situation. The diplomatic consequences if my children harm a human would be..." She didn't finish the thought. The alternative, that humans might harm her children, was too terrible to contemplate. Commander Vex hesitated. "Empress, the human supervisor is currently in pre-summit meetings with their ambassador. However, there is one human technician on duty in Section 47B, a mechanic named Tyler Grant." "Then find this Tyler Grant," Thavera hissed, her patience evaporating. "If any harm has come to my offspring, I will personally ensure this human experiences the full wrath of the Dravari Empire." As her guards rushed to execute her orders, Empress Thavera felt the ancient hunting instincts of her species rising within her. If necessary, she would tear apart the ship with her own claws to find her children. Tyler Grant whistled tunelessly as he tightened a bolt on the environmental control unit, his broad shoulders hunched in the cramped maintenance shaft. At 32, he'd been working as a mechanic on various spaceships for over a decade, but being assigned to the Dravari flagship was by far his most prestigious posting. Not that the bugs seemed to appreciate his efforts. The Dravari engineers watched him work with what he interpreted as suspicion, though it was hard to read expressions on faces that were essentially sophisticated insectoid structures. They communicated primarily through mandible clicks, antenna positions, and color shifts in their exoskeletons, subtleties that most humans hadn't mastered interpreting. Tyler didn't mind the isolation much. He'd always been more comfortable with machines than people anyway. Growing up as a foster kid bouncing between homes had taught him to be self-sufficient and to find satisfaction in fixing things rather than forming attachments that wouldn't last. He closed the panel on the environmental unit and gathered his tools. That should fix the temperature fluctuations in this section. The Dravari preferred their ships significantly warmer than humans found comfortable, which meant Tyler worked in a constant sweat while wearing the lightest regulation jumpsuit allowed. A soft scraping sound caught his attention. Tyler froze, listening intently. The maintenance tunnels shouldn't have any other occupants at this hour, especially not with the big diplomatic summit about to begin. All non-essential personnel had been ordered to remain in their quarters. There it was again, a chittering noise followed by what sounded like small claws on metal. "Hello," Tyler called out, reaching for his flashlight. "Anyone there?" No response, but the noises stopped abruptly. Shrugging, Tyler packed the last of his tools into his kit and prepared to leave. He'd learned that ships this size had all sorts of strange acoustics. Sound could travel through ventilation systems in unpredictable ways. As he turned to exit the tunnel, something small and incredibly fast darted across his peripheral vision. "What the?" Tyler spun around, his flashlight beam cutting through the dimly lit passage. For a second, he saw nothing. Then, a pair of luminous green eyes reflected the light back at him from a junction about 10 feet ahead. The eyes blinked, vertical eyelids sliding shut momentarily, and then vanished as whatever it was retreated deeper into the tunnels. Tyler's first thought was that the ship had a pest problem. But those eyes had been too intelligent, too aware. And they'd been positioned about 3 feet off the ground, much larger than any rat or space vermin he'd encountered. Curiosity piqued, Tyler decided to investigate. He moved cautiously down the tunnel, flashlight leading the way. At the junction, he paused, listening. The soft clicking sounds seemed to be coming from the left passage. He turned the corner and stopped dead in his tracks. 3 small Dravari crouched in the tunnel, their exoskeletons a mottled pattern of greens and browns that almost perfectly camouflaged them against the metallic surfaces. They were clearly juveniles, smaller versions of the adult Dravari, but with less defined features and proportionally larger eyes. Their antennae quivered as they stared at him, bodies tensed as if ready to either flee or attack. "Well, hello there," Tyler said softly, immediately recognizing that he'd stumbled across something significant. The Dravari were intensely private about their offspring. In fact, he'd never seen a young Dravari before. Most humans hadn't. The smallest of the 3 made a chirping sound and took a step forward, its head tilting in apparent curiosity. Tyler slowly crouched down to appear less threatening. "You guys are a long way from wherever you're supposed to be, aren't you?" The 3 young Dravari exchanged looks, a series of antenna movements that seemed to communicate something between them. Then, to Tyler's surprise, all 3 chittered excitedly and scampered toward him. Before he could react, they had surrounded him. One climbed onto his back with startling agility, while another tugged at his tool belt with curious claws. The third simply stared up at his face, mandibles moving in what Tyler hoped was excitement rather than hunger. "Whoa, easy there," Tyler laughed nervously, trying to gently disentangle the one from his tool belt. "Those aren't toys." The young Dravari on his back had reached his head and was now investigating his hair with fascinated clicks and chirps, tiny claws surprisingly gentle as they combed through his brown locks. Tyler slowly stood, careful not to dislodge his passengers. "I should probably get you back to your parents? Caretakers? Whoever's responsible for you." The problem was, Tyler had no idea who to contact. Reporting that he'd found Dravari young seemed like the kind of thing that could either earn him a commendation or get him executed, depending on Dravari cultural norms he wasn't familiar with. The third and largest of the young Dravari suddenly darted away down the tunnel, disappearing around a corner. "Hey, wait," Tyler called out instinctively. The remaining 2 offspring immediately tensed at his raised voice, their exoskeletons shifting to a darker coloration. Sorry. Tyler quickly lowered his voice. "Let's just stay calm here." To his relief, the young Dravari relaxed again, their colors returning to the mottled camouflage pattern. The one investigating his hair chirped contentedly and settled onto his shoulder, while the one at his feet began examining his boots with tactile interest. Tyler made a decision. These were obviously important young Dravari, and they seemed comfortable with him. The safest course of action would be to take them to his quarters temporarily while figuring out the proper protocol for returning lost alien children. "Come on, little ones," he said gently. "Let's get you somewhere safe while I figure this out." The Dravari youngster at his feet looked up, then scampered onto his leg and climbed up to his other shoulder with impressive speed. Now carrying 2 alien children like exotic parrots, Tyler headed toward his quarters, hoping the third would return. To his relief, as he reached the end of the maintenance tunnel, the third and largest offspring was waiting, chittering excitedly and carrying something in its claws. "There you are," Tyler said with genuine relief. "What have you got there?" The young Dravari proudly displayed its find, a maintenance drone the size of a softball, now thoroughly dismantled. Tyler couldn't help but be impressed by the precision with which the small alien had taken apart the complex device. Those were some serious fine motor skills for a child. "That's actually pretty impressive," he said, nodding appreciatively. "But let's leave the ship's equipment alone from now on, okay?" The Dravari chittered and fell in behind Tyler as he made his way toward his quarters. As they walked, Tyler's mind raced with questions. Whose children were these? How had they gotten into the maintenance tunnels? And most importantly, what was the least diplomatically catastrophic way to return them? Commander Vex moved swiftly through the corridors of the Celestial Dominion, flanked by 4 royal guards. His antennae lay flat against his head in a posture of urgency as they approached the human quarters. The Empress's offspring missing was calamitous enough, but potentially in the vicinity of an unpredictable alien species. It made his exoskeleton tighten with stress. The human diplomatic contingent had been carefully selected, of course. The best examples of their species, controlled, intelligent, and culturally sensitive. But this mechanic, Tyler Grant, was merely technical staff. His psychological profile had been reviewed only cursorily before he was permitted aboard. They reached the door to the humans' quarters, and Vex signaled to his guards to stand ready. Protocol demanded they announce themselves, but concerns for the royal offspring outweighed such niceties. He overrode the door controls with his command authority. The door slid open, and the scene that greeted them froze all 5 Dravari in place, their compound eyes widening in collective shock. Tyler Grant sat cross-legged on the floor of his quarters, surrounded by the 3 royal offspring. Far from being in distress, the young Dravari appeared utterly content. The 2 smaller ones were nestled against the human's sides, while the largest sat in his lap. All 3 juveniles displayed the rare iridescent blue coloration that indicated complete relaxation and security among their kind. Most surprising of all, the human was holding a data pad displaying Dravari script, apparently teaching the offspring about their own written language. The young royals were chittering with interest, occasionally reaching out to touch symbols on the screen. When the door opened, Tyler looked up and his expression shifted from contentment to alarm. "Oh, hello there. I was just about to contact someone about these little ones. I found them in the maintenance tunnels and thought it best to stand up." Slowly, Commander Vex translator rendered his clicks and hisses into English, but couldn't mask the underlying tension. "Move away from the royal offspring." Tyler's eyes widened. "Royal," he began, then stopped. Very carefully, he helped the largest youngster off his lap and stood, raising his hands in a universal gesture of non-aggression. "I didn't know they were royalty. They seemed lost, so I brought them here while figuring out who to contact." To everyone's surprise, the moment Tyler stepped away, all 3 offspring immediately began chittering in distress. Their exoskeletons shifted to an agitated orange hue, and they quickly scampered back to the human, climbing his jumpsuit to return to their previous positions on his shoulders and lap. Commander Vex and the guards exchanged confused glances. This behavior was unprecedented. Young Dravari were naturally suspicious of all species outside their caregivers, even other adult Dravari. For them to show such affinity to an alien was beyond comprehension. "The Empress must be informed," Vex said finally. "You will accompany us to her chambers immediately. Do not attempt to remove the offspring from your person, as they appear attached." Tyler nodded slowly. "Of course, whatever you need. I promise I meant no harm." As they escorted the human through the corridors, Vex noticed something else peculiar. The royal offspring, normally fidgety and energetic at this developmental stage, remained calm in the human's presence. The largest even appeared to be sleeping, its head resting contentedly against the human's neck. By the time they reached the imperial chambers, word had spread through the royal guard. The Empress herself stood waiting, her massive frame rigid with barely contained emotion, her exoskeleton pulsing with anxious patterns of color. "My children," she breathed as the doors opened, antennae straining forward. The offspring immediately recognized their mother. They chirped excitedly, but, to everyone's astonishment, did not rush to her. Instead, they clung tighter to Tyler, though their colors shifted to happy patterns as they chittered at their mother. Tyler bowed awkwardly, hampered by his small passengers. "Your Majesty, I believe these are yours. I found them in the maintenance tunnels and was taking care of them until I could figure out who they belonged to." Empress Thavra approached slowly, her gaze moving between her offspring and the human. "They appear comfortable with you," she said, surprise evident in her translator-mediated voice. "They're amazing kids," Tyler said with genuine warmth. "Very smart." The big one here completely disassembled a maintenance drone and was putting it back together when I found them. The Empress's colors shifted subtly. "Indeed, Marek has always shown mechanical aptitude." She gestured to the largest offspring. "Their names are Marek, Sasha, and Vekra. They are 6 months into their first growth cycle." Tyler smiled at each of the young Dravari in turn. "It's officially nice to meet you all." Something shifted in the Empress's posture, a subtle relaxation. "You show no fear of them. Most non-Dravari find our young disturbing. Their predatory instincts are strong at this age, before they develop full cognitive control." Tyler shrugged, careful not to dislodge his passengers. "They're just kids. Smart, curious kids. Sure, they've got some impressive claws and mandibles, but they've been nothing but gentle." Empress Thavra's compound eyes studied him with new interest. "The summit begins in less than an hour. I cannot attend without my offspring, and they appear unwilling to leave your presence." "I could watch them during the summit," Tyler offered, then quickly added, "If that's appropriate, I mean. I don't want to overstep." A long moment of silence followed as the Empress considered. Finally, her antennae dipped in what Tyler would later learn was the Dravari equivalent of a nod. "Commander Vex, have the diplomatic schedule adjusted. Inform the delegates that I will be accompanied by my offspring and their caretaker." Tyler's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, you want me at the diplomatic summit? I'm just a mechanic." The Empress's mandibles moved in what might have been amusement. "Today, Tyler Grant, you are much more than that. You have earned the trust of the future rulers of the Dravari Empire, something no other non-Dravari has ever achieved. That makes you a person of significant diplomatic interest." And just like that, Tyler, foster kid turned space mechanic, found himself preparing to attend one of the most important diplomatic events in recent galactic history, with 3 alien royal children using him as their preferred climbing frame. The Grand Assembly Hall aboard the Celestial Dominion buzzed with activity as representatives from 17 galactic civilizations took their positions. Speculation ran rampant among the delegates about the unexpected schedule change. The Dravari were known for their rigid adherence to protocol. Any deviation was noteworthy. When the massive doors swung open to reveal Empress Thavra, a respectful hush fell over the assembly. Then, murmurs of shock rippled through the gathered delegates as they noticed her companions. Behind the Empress walked a human male in a hastily clean mechanic's jumpsuit. Perched on his shoulders and clinging to his arms were the 3 royal Dravari offspring, their exoskeletons gleaming with healthy colors as they chittered and clicked, taking in the grand surroundings with obvious curiosity. Ambassador Chun of the Earth Diplomatic Corps nearly choked on her water. This was not part of the briefing. "Esteemed delegates," Empress Thavra's voice filled the hall, translated simultaneously into 17 languages. "I present to you my offspring, Marek, Sasha, and Vekra, and their chosen guardian, Tyler Grant of Earth." More murmurs, louder this time. The Aldari representative's skin rippled with visible surprise, while the cybernetically enhanced Varaxian delegate actually stood to get a better view of this unprecedented scene. Tyler followed the Empress to the central platform, acutely aware of hundreds of alien eyes fixed upon him. He tried to remember the crash course in diplomatic protocol Commander Vex had hastily provided. Back straight, eyes respectful but not downcast, no sudden movements. The young royals, sensing his nervousness, pressed closer to him, offering comfort in their own alien way. As you are aware, the Empress continued, this summit marks a new era of cooperation between our civilizations. We gather to discuss trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and mutual defense against the encroaching void entities from the galactic rim. The mention of the void entities, mysterious predatory phenomena that had recently begun appearing at the galaxy's edge, sobered the assembly. This was the true purpose of their gathering, beyond the usual diplomatic posturing. Before we begin these discussions, the Empress said, I wish to acknowledge a significant event that occurred today, one that has caused me to reconsider certain assumptions about our youngest galactic members. She turned to face Tyler directly. Human Tyler Grant, when my offspring escaped their caregivers, they encountered many species aboard this vessel. They passed by Aldari scientists, Varaxian security personnel, even other Dravari. Yet they chose you, a species we have regarded with caution due to your unpredictable nature and limited galactic experience. Tyler swallowed hard, unsure if this was leading to a commendation or an execution. My offspring, the Empress continued, who instinctively fear all but their closest caregivers, found in you something worthy of their trust. Their instincts are pure, unclouded by politics or prejudice. And so I ask myself, what did they see that we, in our ancient wisdom, have overlooked? The assembly hall remained silent, captivated by this unexpected turn. Therefore, Empress Thavra declared, I propose an addition to our agenda. Earth, previously granted only observer status in these proceedings, shall be elevated to full participatory membership, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Ambassador Chen's jaw dropped visibly. Earth had been expecting to spend decades earning such recognition. The Varaxian delegate immediately raised an objection. Empress, while this charming scene is indeed noteworthy, elevating a species with barely 3 decades of faster-than-light capability to full membership status based on the behavior of juveniles seems precipitous. Tyler felt a sudden weight on his head as Marek, the largest royal offspring, climbed up and stood atop his scalp, mandibles clicking rapidly in what seemed like indignation. The assembly tittered with a variety of alien expressions of amusement. Empress Thavra's colors shifted to a pattern Tyler hadn't seen before. Delegate Vorix, my offspring may be young, but they are still Dravari. Our species evolved as apex predators with instincts honed over millions of years. Those same instincts helped us identify which species would become threats and which would become allies long before we developed spaceflight. She gestured to her children, still contentedly perched on Tyler. They sensed something in this human, something valuable. I have learned to trust the instincts of my lineage. As the debate continued, Tyler stood awkwardly at the center of interstellar politics, a mechanic suddenly thrust into the spotlight. The young Dravari, bored with the diplomatic discussions, began using him as a jungle gym, climbing up and down his frame while chittering softly to each other. Ambassador Chen approached cautiously. Mr. Grant, she whispered, do you have any idea what you've done? Tyler gave a small shrug, careful not to dislodge Vecra, who was now hanging upside down from his extended arm. Fixed an environmental control unit? You've just accelerated Earth's galactic integration timeline by about 50 years, she said, her expression a mix of awe and professional calculation. Whatever you did to earn these royal children's trust, it may have just changed humanity's future. As the summit proceeded, Tyler found himself in the strange position of royal babysitter amid the galaxy's most powerful leaders. When the offspring grew restless, he quietly entertained them with simple engineering puzzles from his tool belt, drawing curious glances from nearby delegates. During a recess, the Empress approached him privately. You handle them well, she observed. Most would be nervous having 3 predatory young clinging to them. Tyler smiled as he gently disentangled Sasha from his hair for the dozenth time. I grew up in foster care, lots of different homes with lots of different kids. You learn to adapt, to find common ground. These little ones aren't so different from human children in the ways that matter. They're curious. They want security. They test boundaries. The Empress's antennae twitched with interest. Foster care? You were separated from your biological parents. I never knew them, Tyler said simply. But I had some good foster parents along the way. Enough to teach me that family isn't always about biology. Something shifted in the Empress's compound eyes, an understanding beyond words. Perhaps that is what my offspring sense in you. A caretaking instinct that transcends species. Tyler shrugged. I just treat them with respect. Kids know when you're being genuine. Indeed. The Empress was quiet for a moment, then added, the royal offspring have never bonded with their assigned caregivers as they have with you. When this summit concludes, would you consider a change in your assignment? The position of royal offspring guardian has never been held by a non-Dravari, but there is no biological reason it could not be. Tyler blinked in surprise. You're offering me a job as royal babysitter? With diplomatic status, quarters in the royal section, and significant influence in the imperial court, she added. The guardian of royal offspring is traditionally one of our most honored positions. Before Tyler could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship, cutting through the diplomatic atmosphere. Red emergency lights began pulsing along the walls. Perimeter breach in sectors 12 through 17, announced a voice over the ship-wide communication system. Void entity detected. This is not a drill. All personnel to battle stations. The assembly erupted in controlled chaos as security teams moved to protect their respective delegations. The royal offspring, startled by the alarms, clung tightly to Tyler, their exoskeletons shifting to a pale, frightened hue. Empress Thavra immediately transformed from diplomat to warrior queen, her posture straightening as command officers rushed to her side with tactical displays. The void entity breached our outer defenses without triggering early warning systems, reported Commander Vex. It's moving through the ship's infrastructure, absorbing energy and matter. Conventional weapons have proven ineffective. The Empress turned to Tyler. Take my offspring to the Royal Secure Chamber. It is the most protected location on this vessel. Tyler nodded, already moving toward the exit with his precious charges. The young Dravari, sensing the danger, had become completely silent, their natural camouflage instincts causing their exoskeletons to match the coloration of Tyler's jumpsuit. As he reached the doorway, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered, plunging the assembly hall into momentary darkness before emergency systems engaged. When illumination returned, a section of the far wall appeared to be melting. The metal and composite materials flowed like liquid, drawn toward a shifting shadow that seemed to defy visual processing. Void entity in the assembly hall, shouted a security officer. Evacuate immediately. Tyler didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted into the corridor, the royal offspring clinging tightly to him. Behind them, sounds of energy weapons and shouted commands echoed from the assembly hall. Which way to the secure chamber? Tyler asked the offspring, hoping their instincts would guide them home. Marek, the largest, chittered urgently and pointed down a side corridor with one claw. Tyler followed without hesitation, running as fast as he could while protecting his small charges. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with a patrol of Dravari guards escorting terrified diplomats to safety. The lead guard recognized the royal offspring immediately. You, human, come with us to the evacuation shuttles, he ordered. Tyler shook his head. The Empress commanded me to take them to the Royal Secure Chamber. The secure chamber is in the opposite direction from the entity's advance, the guard acknowledged. Proceed. We will provide escort. With two guards now flanking him, Tyler continued through the labyrinthine corridors of the massive ship. Emergency bulkheads were sealing behind them, compartmentalizing the vessel to contain the threat. What exactly is a void entity? Tyler asked as they ran. I've heard rumors, but nothing concrete. They emerged from the galactic rim 2 years ago, the guard responded tersely. They appear to be living rifts in space-time, consuming matter and energy to grow. Conventional weapons pass through them. Even Varaxian disruptors merely slow them temporarily. That didn't sound promising. Tyler held the royal offspring closer as they reached a massive armored door emblazoned with Dravari imperial symbols. Royal authorization required, announced an automated system as they approached. The guard looked at Tyler helplessly. We cannot enter. Only those of royal blood or specifically authorized by the Empress may proceed. Marek suddenly squirmed in Tyler's grasp, reaching toward a biometric scanner beside the door. Understanding, Tyler lifted the young royal to the panel. Marek placed one small claw against it, and immediately the massive door began to slide open. "Go," urged the guard. "We will hold this position as long as possible." Tyler nodded his thanks and ducked into the secure chamber with the three offspring. The door sealed behind them with a reassuring thud of heavy locking mechanisms engaging. Inside, the chamber was surprisingly comfortable, clearly designed as a long-term refuge rather than merely an emergency shelter. One wall displayed ship-wide security feeds, showing the unfolding crisis. The void entity was expanding through the vessel's port section, leaving dissolved bulkheads and eerily empty corridors in its wake. On one screen, Tyler could see Empress Thavera coordinating the defense, her regal bearing undiminished by the crisis. Engineers and weapons specialists surrounded her, frantically proposing containment strategies. "Your mom is pretty impressive," Tyler told the offspring, who chittered in apparent agreement as they watched the screens. Marek suddenly began bouncing excitedly, pointing at one particular feed showing the ship's main engineering section. The young royal chittered urgently, climbing up to Tyler's head for a better view. "What is it?" Tyler asked, studying the screen. "Something in engineering?" All three offspring began chittering now, clearly trying to communicate something important. Tyler focused on the engineering feed, bringing it to the central display with a gesture. The ship's massive power core dominated the image, a contained artificial star that provided the energy for the entire vessel. Engineers worked frantically at control stations surrounding it, presumably trying to stabilize systems affected by the void entity's intrusion. Then Tyler noticed something odd about the readouts visible on the engineering consoles. The power core was being deliberately throttled down, reducing its energy output systematically. "They're reducing the power," Tyler muttered. "Smart, giving the entity less energy to feed on." But the royal offspring chittered negatively, clearly disagreeing with his assessment. Marek became particularly agitated, climbing down to the control panel and trying to manipulate the communication systems. Tyler gently moved the young royal aside. "Let me help. Who are you trying to contact?" Marek pointed to the engineering section again, then made a series of gestures that Tyler didn't understand. Frustrated, the young Dravari looked around the room, then scampered to a storage compartment and began rummaging through it. To Tyler's surprise, Marek returned with a technical manual, actual physical documentation, the kind kept as backup when all electronic systems fail. The young royal opened it to a diagram of the ship's power distribution system and pointed insistently. Tyler studied the diagram, his mechanic's mind quickly grasping the principles of the alien technology. "This is about the power core, but you're not saying to reduce power. You want to increase it." Marek chittered affirmatively, then flipped several pages to a section on emergency procedures. Though Tyler couldn't read Dravari text, the warning symbols were universal enough. This page detailed containment protocols for unstable reactions. A crazy idea began forming in Tyler's mind. The void entities feed on energy, but what happens if they get too much? Can they be overloaded? All three offspring chittered excitedly, bouncing up and down in apparent agreement. "But the engineers are doing the opposite, reducing power to starve it," Tyler said, thinking aloud. "We need to contact the Empress." He turned to the communication console and attempted to establish a direct line to the command center, but error messages flashed across the screen. Communications were being jammed, whether by the void entity's effect on systems or as a security protocol, he couldn't tell. Tyler looked at the royal offspring, all watching him expectantly. "We need to get to engineering. The secure chamber has an exit, right? Some way out in case the main door is compromised." Sasha, the smallest offspring, immediately chittered and scampered to a section of wall that appeared identical to the rest. She placed her claw against an invisible sensor, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow passage. Emergency routes through the ship, Tyler realized aloud. Of course the royal family would have escape paths. He crouched down to address the offspring directly. "This is dangerous. Your mother told me to keep you safe in here. But if you're right about overloading the entity, we might save everyone on board. Are you sure about this?" All three young royals chittered affirmatively, their postures resolute despite their young age. They were, Tyler reminded himself, the offspring of an empress who ruled thousands of worlds. Courage was in their genetic code. "All right then," he said, standing. "Lead the way, but stay close to me. If we encounter danger, we turn back immediately." With the royal offspring guiding him through hidden passages that bypassed the main corridors, Tyler began making his way toward the heart of the massive vessel. The young Dravari moved with surprising stealth and coordination, communicating with each other through subtle antenna movements and mandible clicks that required no translation. Through occasional glimpses into the main corridors through concealed viewports, Tyler could see the spreading destruction. The void entity left nothing behind. Not debris, not bodies, just absence. It was as if sections of the ship were being erased from reality itself. After navigating a complex series of narrow tunnels, they emerged through another hidden door into a maintenance area adjacent to the main engineering section. Tyler could hear the thrum of the massive power core through the bulkhead, now noticeably quieter as the engineers continued reducing its output. "We need to get in there without being immediately thrown out," Tyler whispered to the offspring. "Any ideas?" Marek chittered softly and pointed to a ventilation duct, large enough for the young Dravari, but too small for Tyler. "You want to go in alone?" Tyler asked, alarmed. "No way. It's too dangerous." Marek chittered insistently, making gestures toward the duct, then back to Tyler, then to a nearby access panel for the engineering systems. "Oh, I see," Tyler said, catching on. "You three go through the duct while I find another way in. We coordinate and meet inside." All three offspring chittered agreement. Tyler hesitated. Sending the royal children ahead alone seemed like the exact opposite of keeping them safe. But they had already proven remarkably capable, and time was running out for the ship. "Be careful," he told them as he helped lift them to the duct entrance. "Stay hidden until I get inside, then we move together." "Understand." The young royals chittered affirmatively, then disappeared into the ventilation system with practiced ease. Tyler took a deep breath, then approached the access panel. Using his mechanics override codes, meant for emergency repairs only, he managed to trigger a maintenance alert in a secondary system. Within minutes, as he'd hoped, the engineering bay door opened, and two harried-looking Dravari technicians emerged to investigate. "Pressure fluctuation in coolant system 4, one said to the other in translated speech. "Monitor it while I check the physical connection." As they separated, Tyler slipped through the still-open door into the massive engineering bay. Inside, organized chaos reigned as engineers fought to manage the crisis. The power core, a contained star suspended in a massive magnetic bottle, pulsed with blue-white energy at the center of the chamber, though its brilliance was noticeably dimmed. At the main control station, a senior Dravari engineer was directing operations. "Continue power reduction sequence. 30% output and decreasing. If we can reduce core activity enough, the entity may bypass this section entirely." No one had noticed Tyler yet. All attention was focused on their emergency procedures. He scanned the room for the royal offspring and spotted them emerging from a ventilation opening near the ceiling, well hidden in the shadows of the upper level. Now for the hard part, convincing the chief engineer to do the exact opposite of their current strategy without getting thrown in the brig for interfering. Tyler needed credibility, and fast. His eyes fell on the nearest engineering station, which displayed the ship's structural integrity map. The void entity's progress was clearly visible, a spreading absence consuming the port sections of the vessel. But something about its movement pattern struck Tyler as odd. It wasn't moving randomly. It was following power conduits, the paths of least resistance for energy flow throughout the ship. And its progress had slowed considerably since the power reduction began, but it hadn't stopped. Instead, it was changing course, heading toward the auxiliary power systems. Tyler made his decision and stepped forward boldly. "Chief Engineer," he called out. "I'm Tyler Grant, human mechanic. I think we're making a serious mistake with the void entity." All eyes in the engineering bay turned to him in shock. The chief engineer's mandibles clicked rapidly in what Tyler assumed was anger or surprise. "How did you enter this secured area?" "Engineering is on lockdown by the Empress's orders. I came with important information," Tyler said. approaching the main console. The royal offspring believe. The royal offspring? The chief engineer interrupted. What nonsense is this? Security. Two Dravari guards moved toward Tyler, but before they could reach him, three small forms dropped from the ceiling, landing directly on the main engineering console. The royal offspring had revealed themselves. The effect was immediate. Every Dravari in the room froze, mandibles clicking in astonishment. The guards halted mid-step, clearly uncertain how to proceed with the royal children present. As I was saying, Tyler continued, moving to stand beside the offspring. The royal children believe we're approaching this all wrong. The void entity feeds on energy, yes, but reducing power won't starve it. It'll just make it hunt more aggressively for what remains. The chief engineer's antennae twitched in confusion. Why are the royal offspring here? They should be in the secure chamber. His gaze narrowed at Tyler. Human, explain yourself immediately. Marek chittered authoritatively and pointed to the power core controls, then to the display showing the entity's movement. The young royal made a series of gestures that clearly meant something significant to the Dravari engineers, as several gasped audibly. I don't understand, the chief engineer admitted, looking between Marek and Tyler. They're saying we need to overload it, Tyler explained. Instead of reducing power, we need to channel everything we've got directly into the entity, give it more than it can handle. Preposterous, the chief engineer scoffed. That would. He was interrupted by an urgent communication from the command center. The main screen activated to show Empress Thavara, her expression shifting to shock as she saw her offspring in engineering. What is the meaning of this? She demanded. Tyler Grant, explain why my children are not in the secure chamber as ordered. Before Tyler could respond, Marek chittered rapidly at the screen, gesturing to the power systems and the entity's progress map. The Empress listened intently, her antennae focused on her offspring's communication. My son believes the entity can be destroyed through power overload rather than starvation. She translated for the benefit of others. This directly contradicts our scientists' recommendations. With respect, Empress, Tyler added, your scientists haven't had much time to study these entities. But look at its movement pattern. It's following the power conduits, seeking energy. When you reduced output, it didn't retreat. It changed course toward the auxiliary systems. It's hunting, not just consuming what's in its path. The Empress's compound eyes studied the tactical displays, which confirmed Tyler's observation. Continue, she said after a moment. If it feeds on energy, Tyler explained, there must be an upper limit to what it can process. Like any organism, too much of what it consumes could be toxic. The royal offspring realized this before anyone else. The engineering bay fell silent as the Empress considered this strategy. The void entity had already consumed nearly 20% of the massive vessel and showed no signs of slowing. If this fails, the chief engineer warned, channeling maximum power toward the entity will only accelerate our destruction. And if we continue as we are, the Empress countered, how long before it reaches the core regardless? 3 hours at current progression rate, admitted the engineer. The Empress's colors shifted in a pattern that conveyed decision. Prepare the overload protocol. But first, evacuate all non-essential personnel to emergency shuttles. She fixed Tyler with an intense gaze. Tyler Grant, return my offspring to safety immediately. To everyone's surprise, all three royal children chittered negatively and clung tighter to Tyler. Marek made a series of particularly emphatic gestures. They're saying they discovered this solution and wish to see it implemented. The Empress translated, a note of what might have been pride entering her voice. They trust this human to protect them. She was silent for a long moment, compound eyes unreadable. Then, very well. Chief Engineer, proceed with the overload once evacuations are complete. Tyler Grant, keep my children safe. If any harm comes to them, no corner of this galaxy will hide you from my wrath. The screen went dark, and the engineering bay erupted into activity. Evacuation orders were transmitted, and the power core systems reconfigured for what would essentially be a controlled overload. We'll channel energy directly to the entity's location, the chief engineer explained to Tyler. If your theory is correct, the sudden influx will destabilize whatever dimensional mechanics allow it to exist in our reality. And if I'm wrong? Tyler asked quietly. The Dravari's mandibles clicked once. Then we will not live long enough for regrets. As the evacuation proceeded, Tyler found himself in the surreal position of standing in the increasingly empty engineering bay with 3 royal alien children, preparing to face an incomprehensible cosmic horror. The young Dravari remained close to him, occasionally chittering reassuringly to each other. "Your mother is trusting us with her ship," Tyler told them softly. "That's a lot of faith to put in a mechanic and 3 kids." Marek chittered and placed a small claw on Tyler's hand in what seemed like a gesture of confidence. Within an hour, the evacuation was complete. Only a skeleton crew remained aboard, the engineering team, essential command staff, and, unexpectedly, Tyler and the royal offspring. "Entity approaching Junction 42 Alpha," reported a sensor technician. "It will reach the primary power distribution node in approximately 5 minutes. "Perfect," said the chief engineer. "That's our target point. When it reaches the node, we channel maximum output directly through those conduits." The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Tyler kept the royal offspring behind a protective barrier, though they insisted on watching the proceedings. Their chittering had stopped entirely, replaced by the intent focus of predators before a strike. "Entity at Junction 42 Alpha," announced the technician finally, moving toward the distribution node. The chief engineer looked to Tyler and the royal offspring one last time, antenna raised in a questioning posture. Marek chittered affirmatively without hesitation. "Initiating power surge," the engineer declared. "Core output to maximum in 3, 2, 1, execute." The contained star at the heart of the ship flared with blinding intensity. Power readings spiked to levels that pushed the monitoring systems beyond their design parameters. The entire ship groaned as energy surged through its conduits toward the waiting void entity. On the tactical display, they could see the point of contact, a roiling darkness suddenly flooded with brilliant energy. For several heart-stopping seconds, nothing seemed to happen except the continued power flow. Then, something changed. The darkness began to pulse erratically, its edges becoming less defined. It appeared to expand briefly, consuming energy at an unprecedented rate, before suddenly contracting violently. "It's working," shouted the sensor technician. "The entity's cohesion is destabilizing." The void entity's form continued to contract, collapsing in on itself like a dying star. As it compressed to a fraction of its former size, a high-pitched keening sound filled the ship, a noise seemingly impossible in the vacuum where the entity had been feeding. "Brace for potential shockwave," warned the chief engineer. "If it fully destabilizes." He never finished the sentence. The entity collapsed to a singularity and then, everted, turning inside out in a manner that defied conventional physics. A pulse of energy shot outward from the point of collapse, racing through the ship's systems faster than the emergency cutoffs could respond. Tyler barely had time to shield the royal offspring with his body before the lights went out and the artificial gravity failed. Emergency systems activated instantly, bathing the engineering bay in red light as backup generators came online. "Damage report," demanded the chief engineer, floating awkwardly in the zero-gravity environment. "Primary systems offline," reported a technician, clinging to her console. "But entity readings are gone completely. No trace remains." A cheer erupted from the engineering team, a strange chorus of clicks and hisses that Tyler assumed was the Dravari equivalent of jubilation. The royal offspring chittered excitedly, clinging to Tyler in the weightlessness with their natural climbing abilities serving them well. "Restoring artificial gravity in 10 seconds, announced the computer system. "Stand by." Tyler braced himself and the offspring as gravity gradually returned. As his feet settled on the deck plates, he felt a strange sense of anticlimax. They had faced an incomprehensible cosmic threat and emerged victorious. All because 3 alien children had the insight that had eluded the galaxy's finest scientific minds. The main screen activated once more to reveal Empress Thavra, her posture radiating both relief and authority. "Status report," she commanded. "The entity has been neutralized, Empress," reported the chief engineer. "Complete destabilization achieved through power overload, exactly as theorized. Primary systems are offline but reparable. No casualties reported in engineering. The Empress's compound eyes fixed on Tyler and her offspring. And the royal children? Safe and sound, Tyler assured her, helping the young Dravari arrange themselves more comfortably in the returned gravity. They were very brave. As were you, Tyler Grant, the Empress acknowledged. When systems are restored, return with my offspring to the command center. It seems we have much to discuss regarding your future role in our empire. 3 weeks later, Tyler stood in newly tailored formal attire before the full imperial court of the Dravari Empire. The celestial dominion had been repaired enough for basic function, though complete restoration would take months. The diplomatic summit had resumed with Earth enjoying its new full membership status, a status secured not through years of negotiation, but through the unexpected bond between a human mechanic and 3 alien royal children. Tyler Grant of Earth, intoned the imperial herald, approached the throne. Tyler walked forward, acutely aware of hundreds of compound eyes tracking his movement. The royal offspring, Marek, Sasha, and Vekra, sat on smaller thrones beside their mother, chittering encouragingly as he approached. Empress Thavara rose to her full imposing height as Tyler reached the designated position and bowed deeply. 3 weeks ago, she addressed the court, this human protected my offspring when they wandered from their caregivers. He sheltered them, engaged their intellects, and earned their trust. When crisis threatened this vessel, he listened to their insight when others would have dismissed them as merely children. Together, they developed the solution that saved not only this ship, but provided us with the knowledge to combat the void entities threatening our galaxy. The assembled Dravari clicked their mandibles in their version of applause. The position of royal offspring guardian has existed in our empire for 12,000 years, the Empress continued. In all that time, it has been held only by Dravari of the highest bloodlines. Today, that changes. Tyler's heart hammered in his chest as he realized what was happening. Tyler Grant of Earth, do you accept the position of royal offspring guardian, with all its privileges and responsibilities? Do you swear to protect, nurture, and guide the royal children through their development cycles, to put their safety above your own, and to serve the imperial family with unwavering loyalty? Tyler looked at the 3 young royals, who watched him with unmistakable hope in their alien features. Over the past weeks, he had grown to care for them deeply. Their intelligence, their curiosity, their surprising gentleness beneath their predatory exterior. I accept, Your Majesty, he said clearly. I swear to protect and guide them as if they were my own. The Empress nodded, and an attendant approached bearing an ornate medallion. This symbol marks you as a member of the imperial household. From this day forward, you speak with my voice in all matters regarding my offspring. Their well-being is your sacred duty. As the medallion was placed around his neck, Tyler felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him. He had entered the Dravari flagship as a simple mechanic, an orphan from Earth who had spent his life fixing machines. Now he stood as guardian to the future rulers of the galaxy's most powerful empire. The royal offspring could no longer contain their excitement. Protocol forgotten, they leaped from their thrones and scampered across the court to climb onto their human guardian, chittering joyfully. The court's initial shock quickly gave way to a wave of mandible clicks that Tyler now recognized as Dravari laughter. Even the Empress's stern features softened. It seems the decision meets with their approval, she said dryly. Later, after the ceremony, Tyler stood on an observation deck with his 3 charges, watching the stars. Ambassador Chen approached, looking both impressed and slightly concerned. Congratulations, Mr. Grant, she said. Or should I say, Royal Guardian Grant. You've achieved what our diplomatic corps couldn't accomplish in 30 years of effort. You've made humanity indispensable to the Dravari Empire. Tyler smiled as Vekra, the smallest offspring, dozed contentedly on his shoulder. I just treated them like kids, not aliens or royalty. Sometimes the simplest approach works best. Earth's position in galactic politics has been transformed overnight, Chun continued. The Empress has already approved technology exchanges that would have taken decades to negotiate otherwise. I'm just glad these little ones are safe, Tyler said honestly. Everything else is a bonus. Chun studied him for a moment. You really care for them, don't you? This isn't just a political position for you. They're my responsibility now. Tyler said simply. Maybe I never had a real family growing up, but I know what these kids need: stability, respect, someone who listens to them. I can give them that, no matter how many legs or mandibles they have. As Ambassador Chin departed, Marek chittered questioningly, head tilted toward Tyler. Yes, we're family now, Tyler answered, somehow understanding the unspoken question. A rather unusual one, but family nonetheless. The three royal offspring chittered happily and pressed closer to their human guardian as they gazed out at the stars. A mechanic from Earth and the future rulers of the Dravari Empire, united by a bond that transcended species and would, in time, transform the galaxy. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.